Sometimes the loneliness hits hardest when you're not actually alone. That was me for a long time. Married, living under the same roof, sharing the same bed, and still feeling invisible. My name's Eric, and if you'd seen us from the outside, you probably would have thought we had it all. Decent house in Aurora, Colorado. 2 cars. No kids, just 2 dogs we spoil like toddlers. I had a good job as a construction foreman. She worked remotely for a marketing agency. We weren't rich, but we were solid. But something changed over time. Slowly, quietly. It wasn't always like this. When I met Taylor, she was fire, talkative, playful, passionate. We'd stay up late talking about nothing. She'd laugh with her whole body, eyes sparkling like she couldn't believe we found each other. I was hooked, man. Completely. She made me feel like I mattered, like I was chosen. But year by year, piece by piece, that version of her disappeared. No big fights, no betrayal, just this slow fading, like watching paint peel off a wall. Not because of a storm, but because time just wore it down. At first, I told myself it was just stress. She had a demanding job, lots of deadlines. Working from home blurred her hours. Some nights, she was still typing at 9 p.m. I'd bring her tea or rub her shoulders, and she'd smile, say thanks, babe, but never once look away from the screen. Eventually, I stopped offering. The little things, they started vanishing. No more surprise hugs. No forehead kisses. No reaching for my hand when we were driving. She still said, I love you, but it sounded like brushing teeth, routine, automatic. Sometimes I'd say it first just to see if she'd say it back. She always did, but I could tell her heart wasn't in it. And honestly, that hurt more than if she hadn't said it all. We still had meals together. We still walked the dogs. But it felt like we were roommates, polite, functional, emotionally separate. I tried to initiate conversations about us, ask if she was okay, if something was wrong. She'd always say, no, I'm just tired. That phrase became the wall I couldn't get past. She was always just tired. And intimacy? Practically non-existent. We'd go 2, 3, even 4 weeks without touching. If I tried to be close, kiss her neck, hold her waist, she'd flinch like I'd startled her, then mutter something like, not now. After a while, I stopped trying. You can only take so many no's before you start to feel pathetic. I began wondering if I did something wrong. I looked in the mirror more. Maybe I gained weight. Maybe I talked too much. Maybe I was boring. I started hitting the gym at 5:30 a.m. before work. Bought new jeans. Grew out a beard she used to like. Nothing changed. I even booked a weekend in Breckenridge, just this cabin in the snow, fireplace, everything. She said she had too many meetings to leave town. Rain check, she said, with a forced smile. That rain check never came. Eventually, I stopped suggesting things. And that silence? It became our new normal. I'd get home from work, take a shower, cook dinner, or we'd order takeout. She'd be on her laptop or watching Netflix with her AirPods in. I'd eat in the kitchen most nights while she sat on the couch. It's wild how quickly emotional starvation becomes your baseline. I got used to the cold. That was the part that scared me, how normal it started to feel. One night, I remember lying in bed while she scrolled on her phone, and I said, do you still see me? She looked confused. What do you mean? I said, I'm right here every day, but I feel like you don't even notice me anymore. She didn't answer right away, just stared at the ceiling and said, it's not that. I don't know. I'm in a weird place. That was all she gave me. A weird place. And me? I was in a place where I still loved her. Still hoped she'd come back emotionally. But I also started feeling angry. I was holding up this relationship by myself, carrying the emotional load, pretending things were fine in front of family and friends. They'd ask how we were, and I'd smile and say, we're good. Because what else do you say? I didn't want to bash her. I didn't want sympathy. I wanted my wife back. But I couldn't force her to care. And I was getting tired of chasing someone who didn't want to be caught. One morning, I made coffee and left her cup on the table like always. She came in, nodded, and sat down across from me. No smile. No good morning. Just silence. And I sat there thinking, if I vanished tomorrow, would she even notice I was gone? Or would she just assume I forgot to make coffee? That thought hit hard, like gut punch hard. And what's worse, I still showed up, still did the laundry, fixed the leaky sink, bought her favorite snacks, filled up her gas tank without her asking. I wasn't perfect, but I gave a damn. I just wasn't sure she did anymore. That's where I was, in this strange, quiet grief. Mourning the version of her that used to light up when I walked into the room. Missing the woman who once danced in the kitchen barefoot, laughing at her own jokes. She was still here, but the version of her I loved wasn't. And the part that haunted me most? I didn't even know when I lost her. It was a Friday night. I remember that detail because I just clocked out early from a long week and stopped by the liquor store to grab a bottle of Malbec Taylor liked. We hadn't gone out in a while, and I figured maybe if I showed up upbeat, bottle in hand, ready to socialize, it might loosen the walls between us a bit. Taylor had invited a few co-workers over for a casual dinner. Nothing too fancy, just a small group she worked with remotely. Some were flying in for quarterly meetings, and she figured it would be a nice gesture to host. I didn't know most of them, just recognized their names from the way she talked about them. Mostly women. One guy. But he brought his girlfriend. So the vibe was more friendly than corporate. We ordered catering from this Mediterranean place downtown. Grape leaves, lamb skewers, roasted veggies. I helped set everything up, arrange chairs, lit candles, pour drinks. I wasn't expecting anything dramatic. Honestly, I was hoping for a quiet evening and maybe, just maybe, Taylor and I would reconnect a little. Laugh together. Lock eyes once. I wasn't reaching for the stars. Just something normal again. People arrived around 7:30. They were nice. Friendly. There was chatter in the kitchen, music playing low from a Bluetooth speaker. Everyone loosened up after a couple glasses of wine. For the first time in weeks, I saw Taylor laughing. Like really laughing. It hit me harder than I expected. Not because I was jealous, but because I realized how long it had been since I was the one who made her smile like that. I sat across from her at the dining table, mostly listening while her coworkers swapped stories about clients, travel mishaps, and bad coffee. One of her colleagues, a lively redhead named Claire, was mid-30s, smart, full of energy. She reminded me of the old Taylor in a way. Claire was definitely the talker of the group. She noticed me being quiet and looped me into a conversation about her dogs, which I appreciated. Then it happened. Out of nowhere, in that effortless way some people do when they're tipsy and unfiltered, Claire looked at Taylor, smirked, and said, "By the way, your husband is really handsome." Like, wow, if I had someone who looked at me like that, I'd never let him leave the house. She laughed. The group chuckled. It was lighthearted, meant to be a compliment. But the energy in the room shifted. Taylor's expression changed instantly. Her shoulders tensed. She didn't laugh. She didn't smile. She looked at Claire with this weird tight-lipped grin and said, "Oh yeah, he's all right. Just all right." Everyone kind of moved on. Someone made a joke about Claire being flirty with everybody, and the moment passed. But it didn't pass for Taylor. The rest of the night, her mood changed. She got quieter. Cold, almost. She barely made eye contact with me. When I offered to top off her wine, she declined without even looking up. I thought maybe she was tired, or maybe something work-related had just popped into her head. But deep down, I knew it was about that comment. Later, when the guests were gone and we were cleaning up, I tried to break the silence. "You okay?" I asked while putting away leftovers. She nodded. Yeah, just a little overwhelmed. It's been a long week. But her tone was short. Her body language closed off. And I could feel it. That wasn't the whole story. When we got into bed that night, she turned her back to me like usual. I laid there staring at the ceiling, but my mind was spinning. That one compliment, meant in passing, had shaken something loose in her. It wasn't about Claire. Or me. It was something deeper. Territorial. Insecure, maybe. I don't know. But for someone who hadn't touched me in weeks, she sure didn't like the idea of someone else noticing me. The next morning, I caught her watching me get dressed for work. Just watching. Not saying anything. When I noticed her gaze, she looked away quickly and started checking her phone. That weekend, things got stranger. She started acting different. Subtly, but it was there. Asking more questions. "Where are you going?" Even when I was just heading to Home Depot. Offering to go with me to the grocery store, which she hadn't done in months. Sitting next to me on the couch instead of across the room. One night, she even rested her head on my shoulder, something I hadn't felt in forever. And I sat there thinking, now that someone else noticed me? It wasn't affection. It was possession. She didn't want to lose me, but she didn't seem to want me either. And that hit hard, because love isn't about locking someone down. It's about showing up, being present, caring when no one else is watching. That dinner party made me realize something. She still saw me, just not the way I needed to be seen. Not as a partner, not as someone to cherish, but as something she assumed would always be there, until another woman casually admired what she took for granted. It was a painful clarity. I didn't feel flattered by Claire's comment. I felt exposed, like a hidden truth about our marriage had just been thrown into the light, and Taylor couldn't pretend not to see it anymore. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't begging for Taylor's attention, but she finally gave it, not because she missed me, but because someone else might. After that night, the one where her friend casually said I was handsome, and Taylor's whole vibe shifted, I started seeing things with a different lens. It wasn't like something broke. It was more like something inside me finally woke up. For a long time, I had been holding on, hoping she'd come back emotionally, waiting for her to look at me the way she used to, or to reach for my hand just once without it feeling forced. But after that dinner, I realized something I didn't want to admit before. She hadn't really lost interest in me. She just stopped showing it because she thought I'd always be there. Safe, predictable, invisible even. And that flipped a switch. I didn't start a fight. I didn't yell. I didn't pack a bag and storm out. I just stopped chasing, stopped waiting for affection, stopped trying to fix what I didn't break. I went back to living. For myself this time. First thing I did was change my routine. I started hitting the gym at night instead of early mornings. Not to make her jealous, not to prove anything. Just because I felt better afterward. My body ached less. My mind felt clearer. I'd come home sweaty and tired, and she'd look up from her phone like, "Where were you?" I'd answer plainly, "Working out." Then head to the shower. No further explanation. No justifying. And you'd be surprised how powerful it feels when you stop explaining your every move to someone who stopped caring about them in the first place. I started dressing better too. Not flashy, just cleaner. Nicer shoes, button-downs, even cologne. Stuff I used to wear when we were dating. Taylor noticed. She'd glance at me before I walked out the door like she wanted to ask where I was going, but held back. And honestly, that pause in her eyes told me more than words. Around that time, I also began spending time with people outside of our usual circle. A guy at work, Kevin, invited me to grab wings and catch a Broncos game at a bar downtown. Normally, I'd say no because I felt guilty leaving Taylor home alone. But that guilt was fading. Fast. So I went. Had a good time too. Laughed. Talked about real stuff. I felt seen as me, not just the background character in someone else's routine. The funny part? The less I tried to earn Taylor's attention, the more she started offering it. It began small. She started texting me during the day again. Little things like, "You want anything from Trader Joe's?" Or "Did you eat lunch?" Basic stuff, but it was more than I'd gotten in months. Then one night, while I was folding laundry in our bedroom, she walked in and stood there awkwardly. I looked up, waited for her to say something. After a few seconds, she just said, "You've been different lately." I nodded. Yeah, I needed a change. She didn't argue, didn't challenge it, just said, "You seem distant." That made me pause. Not because it wasn't true, but because it was the first time she noticed my distance after months of me drowning in hers. I looked at her and said gently, "I've been here the whole time, Taylor. You just stopped seeing me." She didn't have a comeback, just stared at the floor and muttered, "I didn't mean to." We stood there in silence, the kind that says everything. After that, she tried harder, not in a fake way, but in a way that felt nervous, like she was afraid I might actually leave, not physically, but emotionally. She started sitting closer on the couch, made me breakfast one morning out of the blue. She even initiated a kiss one night, something she hadn't done in ages. But by then, something in me had changed. I didn't resent her. I didn't hate her, but I also didn't need her affection the way I used to. That desperate craving to be loved by her, it was gone. I still cared, but I'd stopped bleeding for it. She started asking more personal questions, too. "Are you seeing someone? Is something going on I should know about?" I told her the truth. No affairs, no secret texts, just space. For once in my life, I gave myself room to breathe. And I wasn't about to give that up just because she was scared I'd outgrow her. One Saturday morning, I was getting ready to go grab coffee when she stood in the hallway and said, "Can I come with you?" It caught me off guard, not because I didn't want her there, but because I realized how long it had been since she'd asked to just be with me, without an agenda. I shrugged and said, "Sure." We sat in the car in silence for most of the drive. But it wasn't cold. It was reflective. She kept glancing over at me, like she didn't quite know what to say. At the cafe, while we waited for our order, she suddenly blurted out, "Do you still love me?" That hit me harder than I thought it would. I didn't rush to answer. I took a breath, looked her in the eyes, and said, "I love what we were. I love who I used to be when we were happy. But I'm learning to love myself now. That has to come first." She nodded slowly, eyes welling up, but she didn't cry. I think she already knew that part of me was gone. The man who begged for her love had been replaced by someone who no longer needed to be chosen to know his worth. Since then, things have been different. Not better, not worse, just honest. She tries, some days more than others. But I don't chase anymore. I give what I have, and I keep the rest for myself. I've learned that peace is more important than being needed. And ironically, the more I gave up trying to fix us, the more she realized she was losing me. But by then, I had already found myself.